Hello, my name is Jasmine Lee, and I am not your mama's astrologer. Welcome to the week. Before I get into all the nuts and bolts of a week ahead that has a lot of really challenging astrology, I always like to say that for every hard aspect, there is a helper aspect. I say it when I teach class about astrology, when we're looking at our own charts and you can see all the red lines and blue lines and all of this stuff going on in our chart, that for whatever feels hard in our chart, we always have to look for its counterpart, the thing that helps it, the thing that moves it, the thing that heals it. And that is the mission of the week. It really is it is nothing but when things feel hard, when things feel sticky, crunchy, or when things don't feel clear, how do you best help yourself in that? So knowing your self-care tools, knowing your healing mechanisms, knowing what you need when you get overwhelmed right now is the best way to navigate this week. Because truly, it's not like you guys aren't in it. The energy is intense. We're in eclipse season already. We had it last week, and for better or for worse, it changes everything. And even if it doesn't change something profoundly in your personal life, which it does, it should. If it doesn't, if for some reason you're like, gosh, last week just felt like a breeze. We had snow days and calamity and all kinds of things. Even if it doesn't do any of that, the world changes and shifts. The collective energy changes and shifts. And so being tapped into that as a collective source is the way to engage with it if for some reason you're not feeling it. But I seriously doubt you're not. I can imagine you've had a week. You're welcome to message me and tell me some of the things. I'm always curious to hear how it affects other people because I always feel it so deeply. So it always makes me wonder how the great wide open. There is a messaging tool at the bottom of my podcast. You can click in it and message me, not only to tell me what's been going on, but to book a reading. I also, before we get started with the podcast in general, have my website up. Hooray, I did that right on the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries because that's the thing this year for me that I really want to push forward. It's notyourmamasastrologer.com. Anyway, getting back to what I was saying, the reason why I gave this warning, the reason why I say fortify your soul, the reason why I say know what your own self-healing mechanisms are is because, maybe they'll change. Maybe you'll try that this week and you'll think that didn't do anything. So it's an opportunity to support yourself the very best way possible because I think I know what you guys know that I'm going to say, that it is Mercury retrograde. Talked about it last week and now here we are. It's like the opposite of a fun big sporting event. It's like you're forced to sit through just endless baseball forever because I hate baseball. Except it's very hard, particularly this cycle. And we know how to deal with Mercury retrogrades. We know that things are on the fritz, especially technology. We know that things just don't go as smoothly as we'd like them to, but this one's particularly hard because it is in Pisces, and Mercury is what we call in its fall in Pisces, meaning she don't do good. She doesn't enjoy it. That words and communications and technology and all of the things are really almost as though they're in fog. And you can't see through it, you can't see clearly, and you can't speak clearly. And when there's no clarity, I think that can not only create calamity in the outside world, but also calamity inside of ourselves. Because when we can't organize our thoughts properly, it can be extremely disruptive to then how you make plans, how you sign contracts, how you make agreements. So this starts on Wednesday. What we do holds weight. Everything we do counts for something. And so moving into the week with intention is the medicine of this. We don't just say, yeah, I can do it on Thursday, and then not write it down. We don't say, yeah, I'm going to pay for this thing without checking my bank account balance. We go check it first. It is a practice of presence, is what Mercury retrograde is. It wants us to be present. It wants us to work on, if we are future planning, how is that serving our present self? Because Mercury retrograde is built to whatever is already going to break or needed to break, is it's time to break. That's what Mercury retrograde is all about. It's about seeing the foundational things that you are working on, or the mechanisms that you've depended on that you haven't updated, that you haven't fixed, that you haven't attended to. Maybe your own soul, I dare say. And whatever is meant to totally collapse does in a Mercury retrograde, and it's not convenient. I always say I'm going to get my oil changed. I'm going to do all the things before Mercury retrograde, and then I forget because life's busy, okay? And then I have to deal with it. I just do. And then I have to deal with however more complex that might be, because it's almost like working against the wind instead of with it. These are important life training lessons. Lives, astrology astrologizes. And how do we become what the ask is of the energy? There's so much energy asking so much of us right now. And the other thing that makes it really hard is that Mercury is sitting close to the South Node, and that is where we have to let go. And in that way, it very much feels like we're losing something. It very much feels like the loss can feel bigger this time around. There's community loss, there's personal loss, there's, societal loss. Things that we're just having to be so open-palmed with. And having an open palm is a very vulnerable gesture. Being open is a very vulnerable life state to be in. And the world can be so cruel in so many ways. And it is how we soften instead of harden over time that makes us the very most human versions of ourselves. And sometimes things can just be too much. Sometimes things can just be too hard. And we can have defense mechanisms and shells to match. And this is a week that I want you to be very, very aware of your defense mechanisms. To go a little bit more silent this week. To how to appreciate and be okay in the great nothing. I always reference a lot the never-ending story. I feel like there's so many juicy things in that story that parallels how we go on our own hero's quest inside of ourselves. And they call, the darkness taking over the great nothing. And sometimes I think that we go through phases in our lives that are great nothings, and things that we touch turn darker. And that can feel so confusing and can make us feel so lost sometimes. And with Mercury and Pisces in this way, we are in a great nothing phase where a great something is happening. But we have to first understand our great nothings, that whatever is dark inside of us right now is needing review, is needing slowness. It's not a time to overbook yourself. It's not a time to overpromise yourself. It's not a time to outwardly fix something. It's time to see what's breaking and not just try to push it off to the side, to watch the crumbling of one's soul is an incredibly spiritual process, because anything can be if you make it that way. And anything that is breaking down inside of you right now, the hardest things that you've had to let go of right now, are all seemingly cruel in nature, but truly part of life's cycle. Even the hardest things, even the cruelest things, are part of life's rhythm. I think that we get very separate from feeling of loss, because as a society, we build and structure everything over want, over desire, over attainment. And that's what we view success as also, is the attainment of things. My mom had a mechanism where she really loved to attain things, that to her that meant she was building something in her world. And after she passed away, I watched how all of those things became irrelevant. All of those things just became things that sit in a house where she no longer is. And it makes me think twice about the attainment of things, about attainment in general. And that when we're in a cycle of losing, which is what we're in right now, what is it that we were wanting to attain in the first place? That what did that attainment represent? In society, it tells you that things represent success. But in our hearts, what we're attaining, what does that represent? And these are the thought trains that I want you to go on this week, that as you're losing things, finding faith, that this human world is just our mirror and our lesson keeper and our dark shadow walking next to us all the time. And when it comes to bite, sometimes there's nothing left to do but surrender to that great nothing, as hard as it can be. We do have Venus, our healer of this cycle, sitting next to Mercury, saying that the answer is always our hearts, that the answer is always love, that the answer is always how we reach out our palms to be touched by another. And that warmth that we create together by touching palms together is how we get through great times of loss and calamity, is that it is through each other. And it is through the things that we choose to say that hold great value and weight, instead of all of the other superfluous things that we put in front of us to distract ourselves from the weight of things. And that's what this week is. It is weighty. And I think the thing that is harder still, is that towards the end of the week, Mars is going to square Uranus. And this is a very hard aspect. It's our warrior fighting against big change. And so I want you to look deep inside yourself, palms open, and say, what am I fighting against? Because if you don't even know, it's going to erupt this week, because Uranus don't play. Uranus is going to change it. Uranus is going to move it. And if we have our fists closed real tight, we're going to get drug along, and we're going to be angry about it because Mars is in the picture. And that's no fun. And that feels really spiky and really hard. And so I look at our healers. I see that right now, Jupiter and Venus are trining, which is a very positive aspect, and they are both exalted in their signs right now. So we have our planet of love and our planet of expansion helping us go up against this Mars squaring Uranus. It is like a soul battle of sorts to find out which side wins. And I'm reading the Song of Achilles right now, and so there's a big war going on in Troy. And I always think, because right now ego is winning in my book, that so many people are dying because of these two men's really powerful egos and how they want to be remembered. And I think that history can and maybe is just a construct of our egoic selves writing on paper what we want you to know. So if we're reading history and it's based on what all of those people back when wrote down and want us to know, what are the pieces that they don't want us to know? And I think about that when I read anything that's mythological or anything that is about us but not about us but is about us, how we interpret ourselves through story. And to me, that's what our history books are. They're interpretive stories, because there's so many other people and so many other things that were going on that didn't get recorded. That's us right now. That's you. That's me. That whatever we're doing maybe isn't being recorded in history, but we are history in the present moment. And when this big kind of astrology comes for us, which side of you is going to win? Or which side are you going to attend to? Because there are options here. Because no matter how awful, no matter how hard, no matter how dark or sticky it gets, we always have helpers. We always have the power of our minds, and we have the power of our souls to release what we cannot change, to allow for the structures that we think are the things that keep us the same, are the very structures that will release us and allow us to see the differences in one another, that there is a big ask right now to restructure things so that it can make more sense to us going forward. And that can feel like loss. That can feel like we're having to give something up here. And always we do. Life is energy and reciprocity and exchange. And we can't just keep going the way things are and then expect some big change to happen to us. And sometimes that works. Most times it doesn't. It just gets more complex. In massage therapy school, my teacher always said, move it or lose it. That if we aren't moving our bodies, that our bodies intrinsically become stiff and can't move with the changing tides of aging. And so it is so important to move every day. I feel that way about our souls as well. Move it or lose it. If you are not willing to do some soul work this week, if you are not willing to stare calamity in the face and take some accountability for it and take some strength from it, then you will collapse under the weight of it, because there is so much weight right now. And while Mars is squaring Uranus, the sun is right next to the North Node, where the eclipse just happened. It's still there. And so we still have this fate-changing energy, with Uranus saying, what are you fighting for? I'm going to change it. I'm going to change everything, and let's see how tough you are. And that's going to be the initial instinct, to get tough, to put on armor, to go to battle, to fight against all of this crazy stuff that is going on in the world right now. But then there is this other voice, this great healer that says, but what happens when we expand our love? What happens when we're willing to bare our chest to the sword? What happens when, instead of a defense mechanism, we go so much deeper than that? We go so much deeper than that knee-jerk reaction that makes us want to defend ourselves or defend someone else or blindly turn off what is rational and shifting inside of you. And so it is a moment where the energy is going to try to move you, and we'll all get moved. It's more just, what direction are you going to get moved to? Because there is darkness and lightness in all of us, and sometimes dark wins and sometimes light wins. But the way of it isn't to let one or the other win. It is truly to understand that they are both present. And whatever one we are leaning towards is the one that can overtake us in moments of great calamity, which this week is. So whatever happens to you this week, I want it to be information for transformation. I want it to be fodder for fire. I want it to be a lesson in what is intrinsic inside of you. That whatever decisions we are making now has a very large impact in our forevers, has a large impact in our tomorrows. And that's always true. But when astrology is so intense, the impact of it is so much greater, is so much more. My cat is having a swan song over this. He thinks that this is very true. I don't know if you can hear him in the background, but every morning he howls. And sometimes I think that sounds good. Sometimes I think maybe we all need a good howl in the morning. Maybe this morning, maybe tomorrow morning is a good morning to just howl at how the world is shifting and moving. And hey, maybe aliens are next on the plus side. We don't know. You know, maybe all of this is just too much. And Trump's just going to be like, bring on the aliens. Like, here's the clowns, bring in the clowns. And cool. I could use a good distraction if that's what he's trying to do. I could get into that. I could get into some alien, conversations. That sounds like a good distraction. But remember that that is a distraction, that whatever is going on, we're always trying, like something is always trying to divert us to see if we're ready to stay on our own straight path. So whatever diversions happen this week, whatever takes us off course is helping us, teaching us, wanting us to see where we get diverted and why. That whatever breaks in your world, whatever you're losing right now, whatever is being ripped from your grasp is the most powerful of lessons right now. Good, bad, ugly. And I'm not going to tell you how to do it. I'm not going to tell you to be brave, and I'm not going to tell you to fight against it, and I'm not going to tell you to strap on any more armor. Because the truth is, it's not the time for that. It's the time to get real quiet and to meet our own darkness with our quiet servitude and be willing to be of service to that longing, to that pain, to that loss, to that world that feels like it's taking right now, to be of service to it and to do our dishes more quietly and to make our beds a little more tightly. And that when we go to close our eyes each night, we're more intentionally focusing on where we're putting our dream space, which means also when Mercury is in retrograde this way, please put away your phones before bed. Please take more time to disconnect from the news. Please go on more walks. Please do not overbook yourself. Please do not do things that you don't have to need to do right now because it's enough. I promise you it's enough. I promise you there's so many enoughs that you don't have to add any more to your plate. You just have to watch. You just have to get curious. You just have to be a little more neutral if you can and pay attention and understand that what was meant to break, what does break, was always meant to do it. And how you sit with that says a lot about you, says a lot about where you're going, and says a lot about where you still need to go. And the card I pulled is why. The great question of why. That is what I want to talk to you about to end this podcast. Why? That is what we're all striving and searching for in this life, is that great why. We don't always get to the bottom of it, and life is kind of shitty that way, where I don't know if any of us really reach total, ascension or really understand the great whys. But in times like this, the why is so ever present. There's going to be so many moments of why. Why did my shoelace break as I'm walking out the door? Why did my phone just stop working when I needed this really important call? Well, ask yourself that. Why? Maybe you weren't supposed to get out the door on time. Maybe that important call, it was more important that it didn't happen. Why? If something intense happens to you this week, why? Why do you think it happened? It's turning on that neutral observer that my great mentor, Deborah Silverman, talks about all the time. The why. The neutral observer is the mercurial part of ourselves. It is the Mercury in us, able to observe our thoughts and say, why though? And get curious about that why. And that is the ask this week, that no matter what happens, if it starts happening to you, make sure you're asking why. And take some accountability too. Thank you so much always for listening. Like, share. It blesses my heart every day to make these, to be here for you, to be astrologically present, and to give you a little bit of insight, foresight into the weather that comes our way. And this is not to get into a negative mindset. It is to fortify and prepare so that when you are met with some of these moments, you have more in your arsenal to combat it with. I'll see you next week.